The park was quiet that Sunday morning, with just a few families scattered across the green space. Mike sat on a wooden bench, watching his 8-year-old son Theo race around the playground with boundless energy. It had been 2 years since his wife's accident, and these weekend outings had become their special routine, a chance for father and son to breathe fresh air and temporarily escape the empty feeling that sometimes crept into their apartment. Mike smiled as Theo conquered the climbing frame, giving him an enthusiastic thumbs up. Being a single dad wasn't what he had planned, but he'd found strength he never knew he had. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed 2 small figures approaching his bench. They were identical twin girls, probably around 6 years old, with matching pigtails and worn but clean dresses. "Excuse me, sir," one of them said softly, her eyes downcast. "Do you have any snacks? We're really hungry." The other girl nodded beside her sister but remained silent. Mike noticed how thin their wrists were, how their eyes seemed too big for their faces. "Of course," Mike replied, reaching into his backpack. He always packed extra sandwiches and fruit for Theo, who seemed to burn through calories faster than Mike could provide them. He handed each girl an apple and half a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "Thank you," they said in unison, their faces lighting up as if he'd handed them gold rather than simple food. Before Mike could ask them any questions, they scurried away, sitting under a distant tree to eat. They took small, careful bites, savoring each mouthful in a way children rarely did. Something about their behavior struck Mike as unusual. But before he could think too much about it, Theo called for him to watch a new trick. The following weekend, Mike was surprised to see the same twin girls approach him again. This time he was prepared with extra snacks, having thought about them during the week. There was something about their polite request and grateful thanks that had stayed with him. "Hello again," he said warmly as they cautiously approached. "I brought some extra snacks today. Would you like some?" The twins exchanged a quick glance before nodding. Mike noticed they wore the same dresses as before, though they were spotlessly clean. "I'm Mike, by the way, and that's my son Theo over there," he said, pointing to where Theo was making friends with another boy on the swings. "I'm Anna," said one twin softly, "and this is Lily." Lily gave a shy wave but didn't speak. Mike noticed she stayed slightly behind her sister, as if using her as a shield. As he handed them each a banana and some crackers with cheese, Mike gently asked, "Do you live nearby? Where are your parents?" Anna answered quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Mom's working. We live just over there." She pointed vaguely toward the row of apartment buildings visible beyond the park's edge. Before Mike could ask anything else, both girls thanked him and retreated to the same tree as before. He watched as they again ate slowly, methodically, saving half of their food in their small pockets. The third weekend, Mike began to worry. The weather had turned colder, requiring jackets and hats, but the twins wore the same dresses with only thin cardigans added. Their faces seemed more hollow, their eyes larger. Still, they were clean, their hair neatly combed into the same pigtails. This wasn't neglect, this was something else. "We don't want to bother you," Anna said this time, hesitating before approaching. "But do you maybe have something to eat?" Mike had come prepared. He'd packed a proper lunch bag with sandwiches, fruit cups, and small cartons of milk. "I brought extra lunch today," he said casually, trying not to embarrass them. "Theo never finishes everything. Would you two like some?" The gratitude in their eyes made his heart ache. As they accepted the food with their usual politeness, Mike noticed a small bruise on Lily's arm. Seeing his gaze, Anna quickly pulled her sister's cardigan sleeve down. "We fell while playing," Anna explained, too adult-like for a child so young. "Lily got hurt, but she's okay." Mike nodded, not wanting to push, but his concern grew. He watched them more carefully that day, noting how they looked around sometimes as if worried someone might see them accepting food. They ate their lunch under the tree, then played quietly together on the farthest edge of the playground, occasionally glancing at their worn wristwatches. At exactly 4 o'clock, they gathered their things and left the park, walking with purpose toward the apartment buildings. The fourth weekend was rainy, and Mike wasn't sure the twins would come. But he and Theo went to the park anyway. Their weekend tradition was sacred, and a little rain never stopped them. They were huddled under the small shelter by the playground when Mike spotted them. 2 small figures in identical yellow raincoats, clearly secondhand but functional, making their way carefully across the wet grass. Mike's heart squeezed. They had come out in the rain, just to see if he would be there with food. That day, as they gratefully accepted hot chocolate from his thermos and the sandwiches he'd packed, Mike made a decision. Next weekend, when Teo was scheduled to visit his grandparents, Mike would follow these girls. Something wasn't right and he couldn't ignore it anymore. Throughout the week, Mike found himself thinking about the twins. He mentioned them to his coworker Raj during lunch break. Two little girls, always hungry but clean and well-dressed. Raj frowned. Could be anything, man. Times are tough for a lot of people. I know, Mike said, stirring his coffee absently. But it's the way they eat. Like they're afraid the food will disappear. And they always save some, like they're bringing it back for someone. You're going to follow them, aren't you? Raj asked knowingly. Just be careful. Don't jump to conclusions. I'm probably overreacting, Mike admitted. But if it were Teo, I'd want someone to care enough to check. The fifth weekend arrived with clear skies and a chill in the air. Mike dropped Teo off at his in-laws' house, feeling a strange nervousness as he drove to the park alone. He sat on his usual bench, a bag of snacks beside him, and waited. At almost exactly the same time as previous weeks, the twins appeared, scanning the playground until they spotted him. They approached with their usual caution, but Mike thought he saw relief in their eyes when they saw him. Good morning, Anna and Lily, he said gently. I brought some food for you today, too. As they thanked him and took the offered lunch bags, Mike noticed something he hadn't before. A small hole in the side of Lily's shoe, carefully covered with what looked like clear nail polish to prevent it from getting bigger. It was the kind of resourceful repair he'd done himself when money was tight after his wife's medical bills. The girls retreated to their usual spot, and Mike pretended to read his book while watching them over the top. They stayed longer than usual today, playing half-heartedly on the empty swings after eating, looking at their watches frequently. When they finally packed up and headed out of the park, Mike waited until they were a good distance away before following. His heart was pounding. Was he crossing a line? What if he was misreading everything? But deeper than these doubts was a certainty that these children needed someone to pay attention. Mike kept his distance as the twins walked carefully along the sidewalk, holding hands and looking both ways with exaggerated care before crossing streets. They weren't headed toward the newer apartments as Anna had indicated, but toward the older section of town where many of the buildings showed signs of neglect. He followed them for about 15 minutes, increasingly concerned about their destination. Finally, they turned into a small, worn apartment building that had clearly once been nice but had fallen into disrepair. Mike watched from across the street as they punched a code into the security door and disappeared inside. Now what? Mike stood uncertainly on the sidewalk, feeling both relieved they had a home to go to and worried about what might be inside. As he debated his next move, he noticed an elderly woman struggling with grocery bags heading toward the same building. Without thinking, he crossed the street. Let me help you with those, he offered, taking the heaviest bags. The woman looked surprised but grateful. Thank you, young man. These old arms aren't what they used to be. As they walked to the entrance, Mike casually asked, I think I just saw some friends of mine go in. Twin girls, about 6 years old. The woman's face softened. Oh, Anna and Lily, sweet as can be, those two. Always offering to help me with my door when my arthritis is acting up. They seem like great kids, Mike said carefully. Do they live with their parents? The woman gave him a sharp look as she punched in the door code. Their mother works herself to the bone for those girls. If you're really their friend, you'd know that. Mike felt properly chastised. I'm sorry, I just met them at the park. They play with my son sometimes. The woman's face relaxed slightly. Well, it's not my place to talk about other people's business. But those girls and their mother have had it rough since their father passed away. She works 2 jobs, sometimes 3. The girls are alone more than they should be. But what choice does she have? Mike helped the woman to her door, his mind racing. As he left the building, he looked up at the windows, wondering behind which one the twins lived. He walked back to his car slowly, no longer following anyone but carrying the weight of what he'd learned. The pieces were starting to fit together. The hungry children, the clean but worn clothes, the careful way they rationed food. This wasn't a case of neglect. This was a family struggling to survive. With 2 little girls trying to help the only way they knew how. Mike sat in his car for a long time, thinking about his own struggles as a single parent and how much harder it would be without his decent job and his in-laws' support. He thought about those two small girls taking on responsibilities no child should have to bear. He didn't have all the answers yet. But he knew one thing for certain. Next weekend, he'd be at the park again with more food than ever before, and somehow he would find a way to help that wouldn't hurt their mother's pride or put the family at risk. As he finally started the car and drove to pick up Teo, Mike couldn't shake the image of those identical little faces lighting up over a simple sandwich. There was more to this story, and he was determined to understand what it was. The following Saturday dawned with a crisp chill that hinted at the approaching winter. Mike bundled Teo in a warm jacket before they headed to the park, the trunk of his car loaded with more than their usual supplies. All week he'd been thinking about the twins, about what the elderly neighbor had said about the small hole in Lily's shoe. "Dad, why do we have so much food today?" Teo asked, peering into the large cooler Mike had packed. Mike ruffled his son's hair. "Remember those twin girls who sometimes play at the park? I thought we might share our lunch with them and some of the other kids today." Teo's face brightened. "Like a picnic?" "That's awesome." Mike smiled at his son's enthusiasm. Teo had always been a generous child, quick to share his toys and snacks even before losing his mother. The accident had changed both their lives, but somehow, his son had maintained that open-hearted nature. When they arrived at the park, Mike noticed it was busier than usual, the last gasp of good weather before winter truly set in. He set up their spot on a large blanket near the playground, close enough to watch for Anna and Lily, but not so obvious that they'd feel singled out. "Keep an eye out for the twins," Mike told Teo as he arranged their food. "If you see them, invite them to eat with us, okay?" Teo nodded seriously, taking his assignment to heart as he climbed the jungle gym for a better vantage point. Mike smiled, then felt a pang as he imagined the twins' mother trying to manage everything alone. Did she have moments like this? Small joys in the middle of all her struggles? "Dad, I see them!" Teo called about 30 minutes later, pointing toward the park entrance. Mike looked up to see Anna and Lily making their slow way into the park. Today they wore matching blue sweaters that seemed a size too large, likely meant to last through the winter and beyond. Their faces were pinched with cold, hands stuffed deep in pockets that probably had holes. Before Mike could stand, Teo was already racing across the playground. "Hey, my dad brought tons of food. Come have lunch with us." Mike watched as the twins exchanged their usual silent communication. Anna spoke to Teo while Lily watched Mike carefully from behind her sister. After a moment, Teo grabbed both their hands and practically dragged them to the blanket, chattering excitedly the whole way. "Dad, this is Anna and Lily. I told them about our picnic and they're hungry too." Mike smiled, trying to look casual rather than relieved. "Hi, girls. We have plenty to share. Please join us." The twins sat down hesitantly at the edge of the blanket. Mike noticed they both glanced at their watches almost simultaneously. "We can't stay too long," Anna said quietly. "We have to be home by 4. "No problem," Mike replied, opening the cooler. "We've got sandwiches, fruit, chips, some homemade cookies, and hot chocolate. Help yourselves to whatever you'd like." The girls looked overwhelmed by the spread. After another silent exchange, they each took a sandwich and a small handful of grapes, their movements cautious as if expecting to be told they'd taken too much. "The hot chocolate is really good," Teo said, oblivious to their discomfort as he poured cups for everyone. "Dad makes it from scratch." As they ate, Mike kept the conversation light, asking about school and their favorite subjects. Slowly, the twins began to relax, especially Lily, who seemed to find her voice as Teo showed her his collection of unusual rocks. "My mom collects pretty stones too," she said softly, examining a piece of rose quartz. "She has them on our windowsill." It was the most Mike had heard her speak, and he filed away this small detail about their mother. "What does your mom do?" he asked casually, passing around cookies. Anna answered as usual, taking the lead. "She helps sick people, and she cleans offices at night." "That sounds like important work," Mike said. "My wife, Teo's mom, was a nurse before she passed away." Both girls looked at him with new understanding in their eyes. "Our dad died too," Anna said simply. "Mom says he watches us from heaven." "I bet he does," Mike replied, his throat tight. "And I bet he's very proud of you both." As they continued eating, Mike noticed something odd. Between bites, the twins were carefully wrapping portions of their food in napkins, tucking them into their pockets when they thought he wasn't looking. "There's plenty more," he said gently, And you can take some home if you'd like. Both girls froze, caught in their secret task. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but Anna straightened her shoulders. We're not stealing, she said defensively. It's okay, Mike interrupted softly. I understand here. He reached into the cooler and pulled out several containers he'd packed for exactly this purpose. These are extras I made for you to take home. There's enough for dinner tonight and some breakfast tomorrow. The twins stared at the containers, then at Mike, confusion and hope warring on their identical faces. Really? Lily whispered. For us and Mom too? Especially for your mom, Mike said. It sounds like she works very hard taking care of you. Anna's suspicious expression slowly melted. She works all the time. She's so tired when she gets home. And sometimes there's not much food left by the end of the month, Lily added, earning a sharp look from her sister. Well, Mike said, keeping his tone matter-of-fact rather than pitying. My mom always made extra food for neighbors when I was growing up. She said good food is meant to be shared. This seemed to ease the twins' discomfort. They helped pack the containers into a shopping bag. And for the first time, Mike saw them truly smile, not the polite, cautious smile they gave when accepting food, but a real, childlike expression of joy. As they all finished eating, Teo convinced the twins to play on the swings with him. Mike watched them, noticing how even in play the girls kept checking their watches. They had responsibilities beyond their years. These two small children, at 3:45, Anna nudged her sister and they reluctantly said goodbye to Teo. Thank you for the food, Anna said formally to Mike, holding the bag of containers carefully. Yeah, thanks, Lily added with unusual enthusiasm. The cookies were the best part, Mike smiled. You're very welcome. We come here most weekends if you ever want to join us again. After they left, Mike and Teo packed up their remaining supplies. Teo was unusually quiet as they loaded the car. What's on your mind, buddy? Mike asked. Teo looked up at him with serious eyes. Anna and Lily don't have as much as we do, right? Mike nodded, unsure how to explain economic hardship to an 8-year-old. But we don't have Mom anymore and they don't have a dad. Teo continued thoughtfully. So everyone is missing something, right? Mike hugged his son, amazed at his wisdom. That's exactly right. Everyone has challenges, and that's why we help each other when we can. Throughout the week that followed, Mike couldn't stop thinking about the twins and their mother. The image of those small hands carefully wrapping food to take home haunted him. He'd been through tough times after his wife's death, but he'd never faced the kind of grinding, day-to-day struggle that their family seemed to be experiencing. On Thursday, he mentioned the situation to his neighbor Dina, a retired social worker who often watched Teo after school. The mother might not welcome interference, Dina warned as they shared coffee while Teo did homework. Pride can be stronger than hunger sometimes. I know, Mike sighed. But those girls are taking food from strangers in the park. That's dangerous, even if it was just me this time. Dina nodded thoughtfully. There are some resources, food banks, assistance programs. But many working families fall into the gap where they make too much for help, but not enough to truly get by. Especially with medical bills, Mike said, remembering his own struggles after his wife's extended hospital stay. Why don't you write a note? Dina suggested. Include it with the food. Be honest but respectful, mother to mother, or in your case, parent to parent. That night after Teo went to bed, Mike sat at the kitchen table with a blank card, struggling to find the right words. How could he offer help without implying judgment? How could he convey concern without overstepping? Finally, he wrote simply, I'm Mike, Teo's dad from the park. Your daughters are wonderful children, and they've become friends with my son. I'm a single parent too, and I know how hard that road can be. The girls mentioned you work 2 jobs. That's amazing dedication. I've included some extra food that I thought you all might enjoy. No strings attached, just one parent supporting another. If you ever want to talk, my number is below. Either way, the girls are always welcome to join our park lunches. He read it over, hoping it struck the right tone, then tucked it into an envelope. Saturday came, and with it, another trip to the park. This time, Mike had prepared even more carefully, packing not only lunch and containers to take home but also a small bag with new winter hats and gloves for the twins. The weather forecast showed snow coming next week, and he'd noticed their thin cardigans. Do you think Anna and Lily will come today? Teo asked as they set up their picnic. I want to show them my new game. I hope so, Mike replied, scanning the park entrance. The weather was considerably colder today, and fewer families had braved the chill. They waited nearly an hour, but the twins didn't appear. Teo's disappointment was palpable as he half-heartedly kicked at piles of leaves. Maybe they're busy today, Mike suggested, though he felt uneasy. The girls had been so reliable in their Saturday visits. Can we wait a little longer? Teo pleaded. Mike nodded, and they stayed until the afternoon grew late and the weak winter sun began its early descent. Still no sign of Anna and Lily. As they reluctantly packed up, Mike made a decision. The food wouldn't keep another week, and his worry wouldn't let him simply go home. Teo, would you mind if we dropped this food off on our way home? For Anna and Lily? Teo brightened immediately. We know where they live? Let's go! Mike hesitated, not wanting to involve Teo too deeply in what might be an awkward situation. How about I drop you at Grandma and Grandpa's for a bit? They've been wanting to see you, and I can take care of this errand. Though disappointed, Teo agreed, especially when Mike promised to tell him everything later. After dropping Teo off, Mike drove to the apartment building where he'd followed the twins. The grocery bag sat on the passenger seat, now containing containers of food, the envelope with his note, and the small package with winter accessories. Parking across the street, Mike stared up at the building, second thoughts flooding his mind. Was this inappropriate? Would he be making things worse? What if the mother was offended? She's just another parent trying her best, he murmured to himself, gathering his courage along with the bags. Just like me. He entered the building, realizing too late that he had no idea which apartment belonged to the family. The elderly woman had helped him inside last time, but now the security door was locked, the entry hall empty. Mike was about to give up when the door opened behind him, and a harried-looking man with a toddler rushed past. Mike caught the door before it closed and slipped inside, feeling vaguely criminal. Standing in the lobby, he faced another dilemma. There were at least 20 apartments, and he had no idea which one might be the twins. Knocking on random doors seemed like a terrible idea. As he stood there uncertainly, he heard childish voices echoing down the stairwell. His heart leapt as two small figures appeared, carrying a trash bag between them that looked too heavy for their size. Anna, Lily, he called softly. Both girls froze on the bottom step, their eyes wide with surprise and something like alarm. Mr. Mike? Anna said cautiously. What are you doing here? I brought some food from our picnic today, he said, trying to sound casual. You didn't come to the park, so I thought I'd drop it by. The twins exchanged their typical silent communication before Lily spoke up. Mom is sleeping. She worked all night and has to go back soon. I don't want to disturb her, Mike assured them. I just wanted to leave this for you. He held up the bags. Anna's face relaxed slightly. We can take it. We were just bringing out the trash. Mike helped them with the heavy bag, then handed over the food and package. There's a note for your mom inside and some warm hats and gloves for winter. Lily's eyes widened. For us? Brand new, Mike confirmed with a smile. Why are you being so nice to us? Anna asked suddenly, her young face serious. Mom says we shouldn't take things from strangers. Mike knelt down to their level. Your mom is absolutely right. But I'm hoping we can be friends, not strangers. My son Teo really likes playing with you both. The girls seem to consider this. Finally, Anna nodded. We'll give everything to Mom when she wakes up. Thank you. You're welcome, Mike said, standing. We'll be at the park next Saturday, too, if you want to come. As he turned to leave, Lily called after him. Mr. Mike? Mom was crying last night because the heating bill came. That's why we couldn't come to the park today. She said we needed to stay home and save energy. Anna hushed her sister sharply, but the words hung in the air between them. Mike's heart clenched at this glimpse into their private struggles. I understand, he said simply. Sometimes we all have hard days. Tell your mom I hope the food helps a little. Walking back to his car, Mike felt both better and worse. He'd delivered the food, and hopefully his note would be received in the spirit intended. But Lily's innocent revelation about the heating bill painted a more desperate picture than he'd realized. As he drove to pick up Teo, Mike found himself wondering what more he could do without overstepping. The twins and their mother had become important to him somehow, these strangers he barely knew. They were survivors just like him and Teo, making their way through loss and hardship one day at a time. Whatever happened next, Mike knew he couldn't simply walk away. Somewhere in that apartment building, a woman was doing everything humanly possible to keep her family afloat. while her children were hungry enough to ask strangers for food in the park. Next Saturday couldn't come soon enough. Mike hoped the twins would be there and maybe, just maybe, their mother would come too. The next week passed in a blur for Mike. Work was busier than usual with year-end projects piling up, and Teo had caught a mild cold that kept them home for a few days. But through it all, Mike's thoughts kept drifting to the twins and their mother. Had she read his note? Was she angry about his presumption? Would the girls return to the park? By Friday night, as he packed lunches for their Saturday outing, Mike had almost convinced himself they wouldn't see the twins again. His note had probably crossed a line, and the mother had likely told her daughters to stay away from the nosy man at the park. "Dad, can we make extra cookies for Anna and Lily tomorrow?" Teo asked, already in pajamas but lingering in the kitchen doorway. Mike smiled at his son. "Already ahead of you, buddy. The dough is in the fridge and we'll bake them first thing in the morning." Teo yawned widely. "Do you think their mom will come too?" "I want to meet her." "I don't know," Mike admitted. "But either way, we'll have a good day at the park." The next morning dawned with the first light dusting of snow. Not enough to close the park, but enough to transform the landscape into a winter wonderland that had Teo bouncing with excitement. "Snow day, snow day," he chanted as they loaded the car with their usual supplies, plus extra thermoses of hot chocolate and the freshly baked cookies. The park was quieter than usual when they arrived, the cold keeping many families home. Mike laid their picnic blanket on a relatively dry spot, under a large tree, and set up their small portable heater, a splurge he'd bought years ago for camping trips that now served them well on winter park days. "I'll make a snow friend for Anna and Lily," Teo declared, already gathering snow from the ground. Mike helped his son roll increasingly larger snowballs, glad for the distraction. As the morning wore on, though, he found himself checking the park entrance more and more frequently, hope fading with each passing hour. They were just about to break for lunch when Teo suddenly shouted, "They're here!" "Dad, look." Mike turned to see not two but three figures making their way carefully along the snowy path. The twins were easily recognizable in their matching blue sweaters, now paired with the new red hats and gloves Mike had given them. But it was the woman with them who captured his attention. She was small, like her daughters, with the same delicate features magnified by what looked like exhaustion. Her coat was too thin for the weather, and she walked with the slightly hunched posture of someone carrying too many burdens for too long. Yet there was unmistakable dignity in the way she held herself, in the protective way she kept the girls slightly in front of her as they approached. "That's their mom," Mike whispered to Teo, his heart suddenly pounding. "Cool. I'll go say hi." Before Mike could stop him, Teo was racing across the playground, slipping and sliding on patches of snow. Mike watched as his son reached the family, talking animatedly and pointing back toward their picnic spot. The woman smiled at Teo, a genuine smile that transformed her tired face, and nodded at whatever he was saying. Then all four began walking toward him. Mike stood brushing snow from his jeans, suddenly nervous. "Hi there," he called, trying to sound casual. "Nice to meet you finally." The woman approached with measured steps, her daughters flanking her like small guards. "Hello," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I'm Rosa. These are my daughters Anna and Lily, but it seems you already know them." There was no accusation in her tone, just a statement of fact. "I'm Mike," he replied. "And this tornado is my son, Teo." "He told us you have a picnic every week," Rosa said, her eyes taking in the blanket, the portable heater, the cooler. "And that you've been sharing your food with my girls." Mike wasn't sure what to say. "They're good kid," he offered finally. "Teo enjoys their company." Something in Rosa's posture relaxed slightly. "Thank you for the food you sent," she said quietly. "And for the note. And especially for the hats and gloves. That was very kind." "It's nothing," Mike said quickly. "I just thought with winter coming—" "It wasn't nothing," Rosa interrupted gently. "Not to us." She hesitated, then added, "I came today to thank you properly, and to apologize for my daughters bothering you for food." "They weren't bothering me at all," Mike insisted. "Actually, I was hoping you'd all join us for lunch today. We always have plenty." Rosa looked like she might refuse, but at that moment Teo grabbed the twins' hands. "Come see our snow friend. You can help us finish him." As the children ran off, Rosa smiled faintly. "He's a good boy," she said, watching them go. "Like his father, it seems. Mike felt himself flush. I do my best. It's not always easy. No, Rosa agreed softly. It's not. There was a moment of understanding between them, two single parents who knew the weight of doing it all alone. Please, Mike said, gesturing to the blanket. Have a seat. The heater actually works pretty well. After a brief hesitation, Rosa nodded and sat down at the edge of the blanket. Mike busied himself with unpacking lunch, giving her time to get comfortable. Your girls told me you worked 2 jobs, he said as he laid out sandwiches and containers of soup. That can't be easy. Rosa watched him with careful eyes. I work at Memorial Hospital during the day as an aide, and I clean offices at night. The hours are long, but the hospital job has benefits. That's important with children. Mike nodded. My wife was at Memorial at the end. They have good people there. I'm sorry about your wife, Rosa said. The girls mentioned she passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. Mike was surprised by how easily he could say it now, when once even thinking those words had felt impossible. My husband had a heart attack, Rosa offered. 8 months ago. It was unexpected. Mike handed her a cup of hot chocolate. The unexpected ones are the hardest, I think. No time to prepare. Rosa accepted the cup with a small nod. One day he was fixing the sink, the next day he was gone. She stared into the steaming liquid. The medical bills came anyway. Mike understood then the root of the family's financial problems. He'd been fortunate enough to have good insurance through his tech company job, but he knew many families weren't so lucky. I remember when the first collection notice came after my wife died, he said quietly. I threw it across the room. Broke a lamp. A ghost of a smile touched Rosa's lips. I cried on mine. The ink ran so badly they had to send another. The children's laughter rang out across the playground as they worked on their snow creation, momentarily free from adult concerns. They're adjusting, Rosa said, following Mike's gaze. Better than I am sometimes. But they shouldn't have been asking strangers for food. I was horrified when they told me. Kids are resourceful, Mike said. And they love you. They were trying to help. By begging? Rosa's voice broke slightly. I work so hard to give them everything they need. You do, Mike assured her. Anyone can see that. They're clean, polite, clearly well-loved. But sometimes it takes a village, right? That's what my mother-in-law always says. Rosa looked at him for a long moment. Is that what this is? You being part of our village? Mike felt suddenly self-conscious. I just know what it's like, that's all. When my wife first died, people brought food, offered help with Teo. I was too proud to accept most of it, but the few times I did, he shrugged. It made a difference. The children came racing back, cheeks red with cold and exertion. Mom, come see our snowman. Lily tugged at her mother's hand. Snow person, Anna corrected. Teo says it doesn't have to be a man. Snow friend, Teo declared definitively. Come on, everybody. The adults allowed themselves to be pulled to the partially formed snow figure, which had sticks for arms and rocks for buttons. We need something for the face, Anna said seriously. Mike dug into his pocket and produced a small carrot he'd brought for the rabbits that sometimes visited the park. Will this work for a nose? The children cheered while Rosa watched with a soft expression. For that moment, they were just two families enjoying a snowy day at the park, their troubles temporarily set aside. After they'd admired the completed snow friend from all angles, Mike announced it was time for lunch. The children raced back to the blanket, and this time Rosa helped Mike serve the food. You come prepared, she observed, noting the thermoses of soup, the carefully wrapped sandwiches, the sliced fruit in containers. Mike smiled. It took me a while to get the hang of it. The first few months after Kelly died, we ate a lot of peanut butter sandwiches and cereal. Rosa laughed, a real laugh that lit up her whole face. For us, it was scrambled eggs. For every meal, I can barely look at them now. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily. Rosa talked about growing up in New Mexico, moving here for her husband's job at the factory that had since closed down. Mike shared stories of his tech industry work, the children's coding camp he volunteered at on some weekends. You teach coding? Rosa asked, interested. The girls' school has a new computer lab, but the after-school programs cost extra. I could teach them some basics, Mike offered. Teo's learning too. It could be fun for all of them. When lunch was finished and the children were playing nearby, Rosa helped Mike pack up the remaining food. Her movements were efficient, practiced, the motions of someone used to making order out of chaos. I can't keep accepting food from you, she said suddenly, her voice low enough that the children wouldn't hear. Mike paused, choosing his words carefully. I understand, but maybe we could take turns? You could bring something next week and I'll bring something. The kids enjoy eating together. Rosa seemed to consider this. I make good tamales. My grandmother's recipe. That sounds amazing, Mike said sincerely. Much better than my sandwiches. Rosa nodded slowly. Okay, next Saturday I'll bring tamales. She glanced at her watch and sighed. We should go. I have the night shift at 6. Let me drive you, Mike offered. It's getting colder and you have a long walk. He expected her to refuse, but after glancing at her daughters, Rosa nodded. Thank you. That would help. The drive to Rosa's apartment was filled with the children's chatter from the back seat. Mike noticed how Rosa gave directions confidently, not hiding her address as if ashamed. It was a small but meaningful gesture of trust. When they arrived, Mike handed Rosa a container with the remaining soup and cookies. For later, he said. Teo and I always make too much. Rosa accepted it with dignity. Next week, you'll take home leftover tamales. Deal, Mike agreed. As the twins scrambled out of the car, Rosa lingered for a moment. I read your note 3 times, she said quietly. No one has spoken to me like that, parent to parent, since my husband died. Everyone either pities me or judges me. You just understood. Before Mike could respond, she was gone, herding her daughters toward the building entrance. He watched until they were safely inside, feeling a strange mix of emotions he couldn't quite name. They're nice, Teo said from the back seat, breaking into his thoughts. Yes, they are, Mike agreed, starting the car. And their mom is pretty when she smiles, his son added casually. Mike glanced in the rearview mirror, catching Teo's innocent expression. Yes, he said after a moment. She is. Throughout the week that followed, Mike found himself thinking about Rosa during quiet moments, her quiet strength, the way exhaustion couldn't quite dim the intelligence in her eyes, how her face transformed when she smiled at her daughters. It had been a long time since he'd really looked at another person that way, seeing past the surface to the resilience beneath. On Wednesday, he received a text from an unknown number. This is Rosa. Hope it's okay that I'm texting. The girls have been asking when we'll see Teo again. Thank you for the soup. It lasted 2 dinners. Mike saved the number immediately and replied, Definitely okay. Teo's been talking non-stop about the twins. See you Saturday. I can pick you up if that helps. Her response came hours later, likely during a break at work. We'll be there. A ride would be nice, thank you. By the time Saturday arrived again, Mike realized something had shifted. They weren't just helping a family in need anymore. They were forming a friendship. And as he loaded the car with their park supplies, he found himself looking forward to seeing not just the twins, but their mother as well. Winter had arrived in earnest now, the park blanketed in several inches of snow. Most families would stay away, but Mike had a feeling Rosa and her daughters would keep their promise. And he intended to keep his, to be there week after week, building whatever this was, one Saturday at a time. As he buckled Teo into the car, his son asked, Are we part of their family now, Dad? Anna says we could be like cousins. Mike smiled, touched by the innocent question. We're friends for sure, and friends can become like family sometimes when they need each other. Good, Teo said decisively. Everybody needs a family. Mike couldn't argue with that simple wisdom as they drove through the snow-covered streets toward the apartment building where Rosa and the twins waited. Everyone did need family. Sometimes the one you were born with, sometimes the one you found along the way. And sometimes when you least expected it, in a park on an ordinary Saturday with 2 hungry little girls and their brave mother. The road ahead wouldn't be simple, not for any of them. But as he parked outside Rosa's building and saw 3 figures emerge, bundled against the cold but smiling in recognition, Mike felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. The quiet certainty that they were exactly where they needed to be. 2 months had passed since that first snowy Saturday when Rosa joined them at the park. What had begun as occasional weekend picnics had evolved into a steady rhythm in their life. As every Saturday, weather permitting, they gathered at the park. On the coldest days, they would meet at the community center indoor playground instead, where the children could run and play while Rosa and Mike talked over coffee from the vending machine. Today was a rare sunny February day, cold but bright, perfect for a quick outdoor picnic before retreating somewhere warmer. Mike was running late, having spent the morning helping Tia with a science project that had taken longer than expected. His phone chimed as he loaded their supplies into the car. "We're already at the park," Rosa's text read. "Girls insisted on coming early to save our spot." Mike smiled, imagining the twins standing guard over the picnic table they now considered their own. "Be there in 15, he replied. "Teo's bringing his project to show the girls." When they arrived, Mike spotted them immediately, the twins building a snow fort while Rosa watched from the picnic table, her hands wrapped around a steaming travel mug. She looked up as they approached, her face brightening in a way that still made Mike's heart skip a beat. "Let me guess," she called. "The solar system project took all morning?" "How did you know?" Mike laughed, setting down their bags. Rosa's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Because Anna and Lily did the same project last month, and we were up until midnight painting Neptune." "At least we finished," Mike sighed. "Though I'm still finding glitter in my hair from the rings of Saturn." Teo bounded over to the twins, carefully carrying his shoebox diorama of the solar system. The girls abandoned their snow fort to examine his work, pointing excitedly at the planets. "They're getting along so well," Rosa said, watching them. "The girls talk about Teo all week. Their teacher says they're coming out of their shells at school now, too." Mike sat beside her, unpacking the thermos of hot chocolate he'd brought. "Teo's the same way. It's good for him, having friends who understand about losing a parent. His other friends try, but they don't really get it." Rosa nodded, accepting the cup he offered. "The hardest part is knowing they're carrying grief too young. Anna still has nightmares sometimes. Lily makes Father's Day cards and saves them in her drawer. Teo talks to Kelly's photo every night," Mike said quietly. "Tells her about his day." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their children play. The past 2 months had been full of such moments. Quiet revelations, shared struggles, and an increasing ease with each other that had surprised them both. "Oh," Rosa said suddenly, reaching into her bag. "Before I forget, this is for you." She handed him an envelope, and Mike recognized the logo of Memorial Hospital on the corner. "What's this?" he asked, confused. Rosa looked slightly embarrassed but determined. "Remember I mentioned the hospital was hiring for IT support positions? I asked my supervisor about it, and she said they're still looking. The pay isn't as good as what you probably make now, but the hours are regular, and they have excellent benefits. Plus family leave policies that would help with Teo." Mike stared at the job posting in surprise. His current position paid well but required occasional travel, and often had him working late. He'd been feeling the strain lately, trying to balance work demands with being fully present for Teo. "Rosa, I thank you for thinking of me," he said, genuinely touched. She shrugged, but her eyes were serious. "You've helped us so much these past months. I wanted to return the favor somehow." "And you mentioned being tired of the corporate environment." It was true. He'd shared his growing dissatisfaction with his job during one of their many conversations, not expecting her to remember, much less act on it. "I'll definitely look into it," he promised, tucking the envelope into his pocket. The children came racing over then, demanding food and attention. As they ate the lunch Rosa had prepared, tamales that had indeed become a regular and cherished contribution, Mike found himself watching her with the children. She was a natural mother, firm but gentle, listening to each child with complete attention despite her obvious fatigue. "You look tired," he said quietly when the kids ran off to play again. "Long week?" Rosa sighed, rubbing her eyes. "They cut some hours at the hospital. Budget issues. I've been picking up extra cleaning shifts to make up the difference." Mike frowned. "That's not sustainable, Rosa. You're already working too much." "Tell that to the electric company," she said with a wry smile. "Or the landlord who just raised the rent." "What about assistance programs?" Mike suggested carefully, knowing it was a sensitive topic. "Dina, my neighbor I told you about, mentioned some resources that might help." To his surprise, Rosa didn't bristle as she might have weeks ago. "Actually, I have an appointment next week with a caseworker. Anna needs some dental work and I can't." She trailed off, her face tightening with frustration. Without thinking, Mike reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Hey, that's a good step. And you know if you need anything—" "I know," she said softly, turning her hand to briefly squeeze his before pulling away. "But you've done enough already." The truth was, Mike didn't feel he'd done much at all. Yes, they shared meals, and he'd helped with rides to the grocery store a few times when Rosa's car wouldn't start. He'd fixed a leaky faucet in their apartment and helped the twins with homework occasionally. But these seemed like such small things compared to the daily struggles Rosa faced. As they packed up to leave the increasingly cold park, Mike noticed Lily whispering intently to her mother, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Everything okay?" he asked as they loaded up his car. Rosa hesitated, then gave a small nod to Lily, who immediately bounced over to Teo. "We're having a special dinner for Mom's birthday tomorrow," she announced. "Can you and your dad come, please?" Mike looked at Rosa in surprise. "Tomorrow is your birthday?" Rosa's cheeks colored slightly. "It's not a big deal. The girls wanted to make dinner and they asked if you could join us. But I know it's short notice and we'd love to," Mike said before she could finish. He looked to Teo, who was nodding enthusiastically. "What time?" 5 o'clock, Anna said, having joined her sister. "We're making spaghetti because it's Mom's favorite. And cake," Lily added. "Chocolate with strawberries?" Rosa gave Mike an apologetic smile. "They've been planning this all week, but really don't feel obligated." "It's not obligation," Mike said firmly. "It's what friends do." Later that night, after Teo had gone to bed, Mike found himself browsing online for an appropriate birthday gift for Rosa. Nothing too personal. Nothing that would make her uncomfortable, but something thoughtful. After an hour of indecision, he finally settled on a practical but beautiful soft cashmere scarf in deep blue, a color he'd noticed she liked, and a gift card to a local bookstore. She'd mentioned loving to read but rarely having time or money for new books. He also ordered a small craft kit for the twins to make friendship bracelets, something they had admired on another girl at the park. He arranged for everything to be delivered to his office the next day, where he could pick them up at lunch. The following evening, Mike and Teo stood outside Rosa's apartment door, arms full of wrapped packages and a bouquet of mixed flowers. "Dad, you look nervous," Teo observed with a child's blunt honesty. Mike realized he was fidgeting with the packages. "Do I? I guess I am a little." "Why? It's just Rosa and the twins." "Just Rosa." Mike smiled at his son's simple perspective. There was nothing just about Rosa anymore. She had become important somehow in a way he wasn't quite ready to examine. Before he could reply, the door swung open to reveal Lily and Anna in matching aprons, beaming with excitement. "You came!" Lily exclaimed, grabbing Teo's hand. "Of course we did," Mike replied, allowing himself to be pulled inside. "We wouldn't miss it." The apartment was small but meticulously clean, decorated with carefully preserved secondhand furniture and touches that spoke of Rosa's heritage. Colorful woven blankets, family photos, small pottery pieces. The girls had decorated for the occasion with paper streamers and hand-drawn happy birthday signs. Rosa emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked different, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual practical bun, wearing a simple dress instead of her work clothes or practical jeans. She looked younger, less careworn. "Hi," she said, smiling shyly. "Welcome to our home." "Sorry about the decorations. The girls went a little overboard." "It looks festive," Mike assured her, suddenly feeling tongue-tied. He thrust the flowers forward awkwardly. "These are for you. Happy birthday." "They're beautiful," Rosa said, accepting them with genuine pleasure. "I can't remember the last time someone gave me flowers." "And these," Mike added, setting the packages on the small coffee table. "Nothing fancy, just you didn't need to bring gifts," Rosa protested, but her eyes betrayed her pleasure. "Yes, he did," Anna declared. "It's your birthday, Mom." The twins had prepared the spaghetti with Rosa's supervision, and they proudly served it with garlic bread and a simple salad. The sauce came from a jar and the garlic bread was store-bought, but the care and love with which the girls had prepared everything made it a feast worthy of celebration. "This is delicious," Mike praised, earning beaming smiles from the twins. "We cooked the noodles all by ourselves," Lily announced proudly. "And we didn't even burn anything this time," Anna added, making Rosa laugh. "There was a small incident with the first batch of garlic bread," she explained to Mike. "We won't discuss the smoke alarm." The children dominated the dinner conversation, but Mike noticed how Rosa seemed more relaxed here in her own space, despite its modest furnishings. She had created a real home, warm and loving despite all the challenges. After dinner, the twins insisted it was time for presents before cake. They presented their mother with handmade cards and a clay pot they had made at school, painted in bright colors. "It's for your little plants," Anna explained. "The ones on the windowsill." "It's perfect," Rosa said, hugging them both. "Just what I needed." Teo gave her a drawing he had made, showing all of them at the park with their snow friend. "That's our family," he explained, pointing to the figures. "See, that's you and Dad and me and Anna and Lily." An emotional look crossed Rosa's face at the word family, but she quickly composed herself, thanking Teo warmly for the thoughtful gift. Finally, it was time for Mike's presents. Rosa protested again that he shouldn't have, but opened them nonetheless. Her eyes widened at the soft blue scarf. "It's beautiful," she said, running her fingers over the cashmere. "Too beautiful for me to wear to work." "That's exactly why you should wear it," Mike countered. "Beautiful things for non-work moments." The gift card earned a grateful smile. "You remembered I like to read." "Mom reads to us every night," Lily informed him seriously. "Even when she's super tired." The craft kits for the twins were a huge success, and soon all three children were absorbed in sorting colorful threads at the kitchen table, leaving the adults momentarily alone. "Thank you for this," Rosa said quietly, "for making my birthday special." "For the girls." "Thank you for including us," Mike replied. "It means a lot being invited into your home." Rosa looked at him thoughtfully. "You know, when the girls first told me they were getting food from a man at the park, I was terrified. I imagined the worst. But somehow you turned out to be exactly what we needed." The simple honesty of her words touched something deep inside Mike. "I think maybe we all needed each other," he said. "Teo and I were just going through the motions before. Now we have something to look forward to every week." They were interrupted by demands for cake and the moment passed. But as they sang happy birthday and watched Rosa blow out the candles, Mike realized how right Teo had been with his innocent drawing. They had become a kind of family these past months, not replacing what each had lost, but creating something new and valuable. Later, as they prepared to leave, the children already making plans for next Saturday's park visit, Rosa walked Mike to the door. "I almost forgot," he said suddenly. "The job posting, I actually applied online this afternoon." Rosa's face brightened. "Really? That's wonderful. I'll put in a good word with my supervisor." "It would mean a lot to me," Mike admitted. "Being somewhere that makes a difference, having regular hours for Teo. I've been thinking about making a change for a while." "The hospital is a good place to work," Rosa said. "Hard sometimes, but good people. And the benefits really are excellent, especially for families." There was that word again, family. It hung in the air between them, full of possibility. "I should let you get some rest," Mike said finally. "Thank you for tonight." "It was special," Rosa nodded, suddenly looking shy again. "It was the best birthday I've had in a long time." On impulse, Mike leaned forward and kissed her cheek, a brief, gentle gesture. "Happy birthday, Rosa," he said softly. Her eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she reached out and squeezed his hand briefly. "Good night, Mike." As he drove home with a sleepy Teo in the back seat, Mike found himself replaying the evening, the warmth of Rosa's small apartment, the children's laughter, the brief moment of connection at the door. Something was happening, something unexpected but increasingly precious. 2 months ago, he'd followed 2 hungry little girls out of concern and found himself on an unexpected journey. Tonight, he realized that journey was far from over. It was in many ways just beginning. And for the first time since losing Kelly, he found himself looking forward to what tomorrow might bring, not just for Teo's sake, but for his own. "Dad?" Teo's voice came sleepily from the back seat. "Yes, buddy? I like our new family," he said simply before drifting off to sleep. Mike smiled into the darkness. Out of the mouths of babes, as his mother would say. Sometimes children saw things more clearly than adults ever could. "Me too," he whispered. "Me too." Spring had come to the city, turning the park into a riot of new green leaves and early flowers. It had been 6 months since Mike first noticed 2 hungry little girls asking for food. 6 months that had changed everything for both families. Today was special. They were gathering for a celebration at the community center, where they had spent so many winter Saturdays. Mike adjusted his tie nervously as Teo bounced around their apartment, too excited to sit still. "Dad, is it time yet? Can we go now?" He asked for the 5th time in an hour. Mike checked his watch. "Almost, buddy. We need to pick up the cake first." I can't wait to see their faces, Teo exclaimed. This is going to be the best day ever. Mike smiled at his son's enthusiasm. I think you might be right about that. The bakery was their first stop where an elaborate cake waited, one Mike had ordered weeks ago, designed with input from all three children. The baker handed it over with a smile, clearly proud of her creation. Someone's having a special day, she commented as Mike carefully placed it in the car. A very special day, he agreed. Their next stop was Rosa's apartment building, though not to pick up Rosa and the twins. They had left hours earlier to prepare for the celebration. Instead, Mike parked and headed inside, using the key Rosa had given him months ago. The apartment was empty but spotlessly clean, ready for its new tenants who would move in next week. Mike did one final walkthrough, making sure they hadn't forgotten anything in the closets or cabinets. It was strange seeing the small space so empty after becoming familiar with its cozy furnishings. Ready, Dad? Teo called from the doorway. We don't want to be late. Coming? Mike replied, taking one last look around the place where he'd first truly gotten to know Rosa, where they'd shared meals and stories and slowly built something neither had expected. The community center was decorated with streamers and balloons when they arrived, the large meeting room transformed by the efforts of friends and neighbors. A banner hung across one wall. Congratulations! We're here, Teo announced as they entered, carefully carrying the cake box while Mike followed with bags of supplies. Rosa looked up from where she was arranging flowers on a table, her face lighting up at the sight of them. She wore a simple blue dress. The color Mike had first noticed looked beautiful on her, and the cashmere scarf he'd given her for her birthday. Just in time, she said, coming over to peek at the cake. Oh, it's perfect. The girls will be so excited. Where are they? Mike asked, looking around the busy room. With Dina in the kitchen supposedly helping with the punch but more likely sampling it, Rosa laughed. She's been a godsend today. Mike's neighbor had become a dear friend to Rosa over the months, offering grandmotherly advice and practical support that Rosa had initially resisted, but now valued deeply. She loves having children to fuss over, Mike said. You're doing her a favor, really. Rosa's eyes softened. That seems to be what you always say when someone helps us. Because it's true, Mike insisted, setting down his bags. Community works both ways. You've taught me that. Before Rosa could respond, the twins burst from the kitchen, spotting Mike and Teo immediately. You're here, they shouted in unison, racing over. Both wore new dresses for the occasion, their hair decorated with ribbons. We made punch, Lily announced proudly. And we didn't even spill much, Anna added with her typical honesty. Mike laughed, hugging them both. Sounds like a success to me. More guests began arriving. Colleagues from the hospital where both Mike and Rosa now worked, neighbors from their new street, families they'd met through the children's school activities. What had started as a small gathering had grown as word spread about the celebration. Among the first was Dr. Patel, the head of IT at Memorial Hospital and Mike's new boss. He approached with a wrapped gift and a warm smile. Wouldn't miss this for the world, he said, shaking Mike's hand. Best hire I've made in years. Mike had started at the hospital 4 months ago, taking a pay cut from his corporate job but gaining so much more. Regular hours, meaningful work, and the ability to be home for dinner with Teo every night. The fact that he occasionally saw Rosa in the cafeteria or passing in the hallways was an added bonus that neither acknowledged publicly but both treasured. Raj, from Mike's old company, arrived next with his wife and children. He clapped Mike on the back with genuine affection. The corporate world isn't the same without you, man, but I have to admit, you look happier than I've seen you in years. It was true. The past 6 months had transformed Mike in ways he hadn't thought possible after losing Kelly. He had opened his heart again, first to 2 hungry little girls, then to their remarkable mother, and finally to the possibility of a new kind of family. The room filled quickly with people who had played some role in their journey. The elderly neighbor from Rosa's old building came, supported by her daughter. The caseworker who had helped Rosa navigate assistance programs arrived with information about education grants for the twins. Even the park maintenance worker who had kindly looked the other way when they used their portable heater stopped by with a small gift. It really does take a village, Rosa murmured as she watched the room fill with well-wishers. Speaking of which, Mike said, your sister just arrived. Rosa turned to see her younger sister Carmen coming through the door with her husband and son. The sisters embraced tightly, Carmen wiping away tears. "I still can't believe it," Carmen said, looking around the decorated room. "6 months ago, you wouldn't even let me help with groceries, and now look at all this." Rosa smiled ruefully. "I've learned some things about pride and accepting help. Better late than never, right?" The children were getting impatient for the formal part of the celebration to begin. Mike checked his watch and nodded to Rosa, who gathered everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "6 months ago, my daughters were hungry enough to ask a stranger for food in the park. I was working 2 jobs and still falling behind, too proud to ask for help, too exhausted to see a way forward." She paused, looking at the twins who stood proudly beside Teo. "But that stranger turned out to be Mike, who didn't just feed my children that day. He showed us what community really means." Mike felt a lump in his throat as Rosa continued. "Many of you have been part of our journey these past months. You've offered meals, advice, rides, babysitting, job leads, furniture, friendship. Today we're celebrating not just one achievement, but many small victories that have brought us to this point." She gestured to Mike, who stepped forward to stand beside her, Teo joining them with the twins. "Today," Mike said, taking up the narrative, "we're celebrating Rosa's completion of the Certified Nursing Assistant program while working full-time." Applause filled the room. Rosa had been taking night classes for months, building on her experience as a hospital aide to earn a certification that came with better pay and career advancement opportunities. "We're celebrating the twins' academic achievements," Mike continued. "Both girls have improved their grades dramatically and been selected for the summer enrichment program." More applause as Anna and Lily beamed with pride. The food security and stability of recent months had transformed their academic performance, their natural intelligence finally able to shine. "We're celebrating Teo's adjustment to his new school and his award in the district science fair," Rosa added, putting an arm around the boy's shoulders. Teo grinned, leaning against her with the easy affection he'd developed for Rosa over the months of shared weekends and, more recently, daily life. "And of course," Mike said, his voice softer now, "we're celebrating our new home." A cheer went up from the gathered friends. The week before, Mike and Rosa had moved their blended family into a modest but comfortable house halfway between the hospital and the children's school. It had a yard for the children to play in, enough bedrooms for everyone, and most importantly, it was theirs, a fresh start together. "It's been a journey with many helpers," Rosa acknowledged, looking around the room gratefully. "Some of you gave tangible support, food, clothes, furniture, job opportunities. Others gave us something just as valuable, your belief in us when things seemed impossible." Mike nodded in agreement. "When I first saw 2 hungry children in the park, I never imagined where that moment would lead. I was just trying to help in some small way, but that small action opened the door to something much bigger than I could have anticipated." He turned to Rosa, taking her hand in his. "I found a partner I wasn't looking for but somehow desperately needed." Rosa squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And I found the courage to accept help, to imagine a better future for my children and eventually to trust again. So today isn't just about our new house," Mike continued. "It's about our new family and the community that helped make it possible." "And cake," Teo interjected, making everyone laugh. "Can we have cake now?" The formal part of the celebration gave way to a joyful party. The children proudly cut the elaborate cake, decorated to look like their new house with tiny figures of all 5 family members in the yard. Guests mingled, sharing stories of how they'd become part of the extended support network that had helped both families through their transition. Dr. Patel cornered Mike by the punch bowl. "You know, when Rosa first mentioned you for the IT position, I was skeptical. Your corporate background seemed like an odd fit for a hospital." Mike nodded. "I had the same concerns. But she was right," the doctor continued. "Your perspective has been invaluable. The new patient portal system is more user-friendly than anything we've had before. It helps that I can consult with actual hospital staff at home," Mike joked. Glancing at Rosa across the room, the doctor followed his gaze. "You two have built something special, you know. Not just personally, but the way you've rallied support for other families at the hospital. That food pantry for staff was brilliant." Mike smiled, remembering how the idea had come about. After learning how many hospital employees, particularly aides, janitors, and cafeteria workers, struggled with food insecurity. He and Rosa had organized a staff-supported food pantry. It had grown into a wider support network that now included childcare exchanges, a professional clothing closet, and transportation assistance. "We just understood the need," Mike said simply. As the party continued, Mike found a quiet moment to slip outside for some fresh air. The spring evening was mild, the community center's small garden area peaceful after the noise inside. He wasn't surprised when Rosa joined him a few minutes later, 2 punch cups in hand. "The children sent me to find you," she said, passing him a cup. "Teo says it's time for the special surprise, whatever that is." Mike smiled mysteriously. "He's been keeping a secret for 2 whole days. That's a record." Rosa laughed, leaning against his shoulder in the comfortable way she had developed over the months. "This is nice, isn't it? Having something to celebrate." "It is," Mike agreed, putting his arm around her. "Though I've felt like celebrating ever since you agreed to combine our families." It had been a practical decision initially. Rosa's apartment was too small and too far from the hospital, while Mike's place had been too expensive for him alone since leaving his corporate job. Pooling their resources made sense, but they both knew it was more than practicality that had driven them to take such a significant step. The kids adjusted so quickly, Rosa marveled. Like they'd been siblings all along. "They chose each other before we did," Mike pointed out. "Remember how Teo drew us all as a family months ago?" Rosa nodded, her eyes distant with the memory. Children see things clearly sometimes. They understand love and belonging in ways adults overcomplicate. Mike took a deep breath, reaching into his pocket. "Speaking of seeing things clearly, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Rosa turned to face him fully, her expression curious. "What is it?" "I know we've only known each other 6 months, Mike began, suddenly nervous. "And we've been living together as a practical arrangement for just a few weeks. But I think we both know it's become much more than that." Rosa's eyes widened as Mike pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Mike, I'm not rushing you," he said quickly. "This isn't a proposal, not exactly. It's more of a promise." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring with a small blue stone that matched her eyes. "It's a promise that whenever you're ready, whether that's next month or next year or beyond, I'll be here. The children already think of us as a family, and I've come to feel the same way." Rosa's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the ring. "I didn't expect this." "Neither did I," Mike admitted with a soft laugh. "When I followed 2 hungry little girls 6 months ago, the last thing I imagined was falling in love with their mother." Rosa's breath caught at the word love, which neither had spoken aloud before, though it had been growing between them for months. "You know," she said quietly, "when my husband died, I thought that was it for me. I told myself I'd focus only on the girls, that there wasn't room for anything else." Mike nodded, understanding completely. He'd felt the same after losing Kelly. "But then you showed up with your sandwiches and your kindness," Rosa continued, a smile breaking through her tears. "And you never pushed, never demanded, just helped, listened, cared." She touched the small box gently. "You rebuilt my faith in people piece by piece. You showed me it was okay to accept help, to trust again." Mike waited, his heart pounding as Rosa gathered her thoughts. "I'm not ready for marriage," she said finally. "Not yet. My life has changed so much in these 6 months. Sometimes I feel like I'm still catching my breath." "I understand," Mike said, trying to hide his disappointment, though he'd expected this response. Rosa reached up and touched his face, her eyes soft. "But I am ready for a promise, for a commitment to keep building this family we've started, together." She held out her hand, and Mike slipped the ring onto her right hand rather than her left. "A promise for the future, not a formal engagement. I love you," she said simply. "You and Teo have become part of our lives in a way I never thought possible again." Mike felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "I love you too, all 3 of you." Their moment was interrupted by the community center door bursting open, 3 excited children tumbling out into the garden. "Dad, you were supposed to wait for us," Teo exclaimed, looking scandalized. "We wanted to help," Anna added, equally dismayed. Lily simply observed their clasped hands and Rosa's tear-streaked face with her usual perception. "Did she say yes to being a real family?" she asked hopefully. Mike and Rosa exchanged a look, then both laughed. "We're already a real family," Rosa told her daughter, kneeling down to the children's level. "This ring is a promise that we're going to stay that way." The children cheered, converging on them in a group hug that nearly toppled everyone onto the garden path. "Can we show everyone?" Teo asked eagerly. "We told Dina and Carmen you were going to ask tonight." "You did you?" Mike ruffled his son's hair. "I thought this was a secret." "Only from Mom," Anna explained logically. "Everyone else needed to know to help with the surprise." "What surprise?" Rosa asked, looking between the three children. In answer, they took her hands and Mike's, pulling them back toward the community center, where their friends and makeshift family waited. "Come see," Lily urged. "Everyone helped!" Inside, the celebration had transformed. The banner that had read "Congratulations" now had additional words unveiled beneath it. "On your new family." A table held a photo album the children had assembled with Dina's help. Pictures of their journey from those first park meetings through holidays. Birthdays, moving day, and quiet everyday moments in between. Rosa gasped, flipping through pages of memories. "When did you do all this?" "Everyone helped," Anna explained proudly. "We asked people to send pictures they had of us. And Dina helped us write the stories to go with them," Teo added. Mike put his arm around Rosa as they looked through the album together, surrounded by the community that had helped make their family possible. There were photos from the hospital Christmas party, the twins' school play, Teo's science fair, and dozens of Saturday park picnics. The final page held a recent photo of all five of them on the front porch of their new home, looking tired but happy amid the moving boxes. Beneath it, in the children's handwriting, were the words, "Our family's beginning." Rosa traced the words with her finger, the promise ring catching the light. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Not perfect," Mike corrected gently. "Real. With challenges and hard days ahead, I'm sure. But real," she nodded, understanding. They had both learned that real love wasn't about fairy tales or perfect endings. It was about showing up, day after day, through difficulties and joys alike. Dr. Patel approached with a raised glass, the other guests following suit. "A toast," he announced. "To new beginnings, to community, and to a family that reminds us all what truly matters." As glasses were raised around the room, Mike looked at the faces surrounding them. Colleagues, neighbors, friends, all people who had contributed in some way to their journey. And at the center, the three children who had brought them together. Teo, Anna, and Lily, now inseparable as siblings. Their past losses not forgotten but balanced by new connections. "To family," Mike said, raising his own glass. "Both the one we're building and the larger one in this room." "To family," everyone echoed. Later that night, after the celebration had ended and they'd returned to their new home, the children finally asleep after all the excitement, Mike and Rosa sat on the front porch swing, enjoying the quiet spring evening. "I keep thinking about those first days," Rosa said softly, her head resting on Mike's shoulder. "How desperate I felt. How ashamed when I found out the girls were asking for food. And I keep thinking about how close I came to not following them that day," Mike admitted. "If Teo had been with me, if I hadn't been so concerned." Rosa took his hand, the promise ring a tangible reminder of how far they'd come. "Life changes on such small moments, doesn't it? A single decision to help or not help, to accept support or refuse it. The girls could have approached anyone in that park," Mike mused, "but they came to me. Maybe they knew something we didn't," Rosa suggested with a smile. "Children often do." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the porch swing moving gently back and forth. "You know what still amazes me?" Mike said finally. "How something that started from such a difficult place, hungry children, a struggling mother, a lonely father, could lead to so much good." Rosa nodded against his shoulder. "That's the thing about rock bottom. The only way to go is up, especially when someone offers a hand." From inside the house came the soft sound of a child calling out, Lily, who still occasionally had nightmares. Rosa started to rise, but Mike gently squeezed her hand. "I'll go," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You've been on your feet all day with the party." Rosa smiled gratefully, watching as Mike went inside to comfort her daughter. Their daughter now, in all the ways that mattered. Their family had been formed not through biology or legal documents, but through countless small moments of care and connection. From a sandwich shared in the park to a house shared in this quiet neighborhood. From hungry children to a promise ring. As Rosa looked up at the stars appearing in the evening sky, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. 6 months ago, she had been drowning in despair, working herself to exhaustion and still failing to provide adequately for her daughters. Tonight, she sat on the porch of a home filled with love, surrounded by a community that had shown her the power of connection. What had left her speechless wasn't just that a stranger had helped her family in their time of need. It was that in accepting that help, in allowing herself to be vulnerable to receive as well as give, she had found a completely unexpected path forward. A new family built on compassion, understanding, and shared experience. Inside, she could hear Mike's gentle voice soothing Lily back to sleep, probably telling one of his imaginative bedtime stories that all 3 children adored. Tomorrow would bring normal family challenges, homework, chores, work schedules to coordinate, but they would face them together. Rosa touched the promise ring on her finger, a tangible reminder that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come from the most difficult circumstances. All it had taken was a single father following 2 hungry little girls, and the courage to reach out, both to offer help and eventually to accept it. And what he saw, what they both saw in the end, had indeed left them speechless. Not with shock or dismay, but with the quiet wonder of discovering family in the most unexpected places.